Welcome everyone to our session. My name is Mark Buffington. I'm a senior consulting engineer here at Jamf, focused on Apple technologies and customer workflows.
And hi, I'm Sean Rabbit, a senior consulting engineer here at Jamf, focused on identity and access management. Nice to be with you.
So why are we here today? Today we're going to look at some different ways of handling local accounts with your deployments. In this session, we'll look at when you might need a local admin account, or if you need an account. We'll take a look at account deployment options, and then we'll look at a couple specific workflows that we'll detail here and sharing more information afterwards. So don't worry if you miss out on some details through the slides as well. And in those workflows, we'll look at randomizing passwords that were created for accounts in a Jamf pre-stage, as well as just-in-time access to computers leveraging Jamf Connect. So here's the crux of the problem. You need to answer why to this statement first. I need a local admin account. With that, you might have some reasons for some one-off changes to individual machines, other programmatic uses, and there may be a better way for some of these things. Ideally, you would not be passing a password into a script or a policy in the first place. That's going to increase your security and attack surface on the machines. But that password can be useful for those scenarios of password resets. Perhaps you desire a lapse workflow, or even simply accessing data for different forensics and data recovery purposes.
Now, here's where I get to play bad cop for you. What this session definitely is not is to tell you how to make your Mac act like a Windows machine. Now, Macs are not PCs. It's just how it works. So if you want something like a lapse user, like exists on a Windows box, that doesn't happen on a Mac. There are some open source projects out there that can emulate that, but interpretation might not be absolutely perfect. And it's also not the point of this talk. And the real big problem here, too, is that macOS is not Windows, and macOS uses full disk encryption with FileVault. The FileVault authorization screen, where you decrypt the drive, does not have internet access at all, unlike BitLocker that exists in the Windows world where it does. It's just something you have to deal with. It's a different type of tool, and it works in a different way. Now, one of the big common misconceptions about having a local admin account is that Jamf Pro absolutely makes you do it. And the answer is it kind of sort of does sometime, but not really. So in one of the places that you might see where Jamf Pro wants to make a local admin account on a box is creating a management account in a user-initiated enrollment. Now, this is kind of a old workflow. It's really designed for machines that are going to be earlier than macOS Big Sur. In this case, if you do choose to turn this on, there's a couple. One, you're just testing stuff out. You just want an admin account on a box just to make sure that if you blow something up, you have a known username and password. It might be used for the remote application, for example, for some very legacy workflows. But you don't have to check that box. It doesn't need to be there. If you do check the box, please consider turning on randomized passwords here, so that way only Jamf Pro knows about it. For more information a little bit later on how that works with Secure Token and FileVault, just remember that Ben Toms is doing a great session here too at JNUC, and he's also got a great webinar that's available on Jamf. So, okay, now you're saying, no, really, Jamf Pro makes me do it. And there is one place where Jamf Pro does absolutely positively make you do that. And that's if you want to change your account settings for a pre-stage enrollment coming in through automated device enrollment. In this particular situation, if I wanted to say, make a standard user, or if I want to make the very first user an admin user no matter what, or if I wanted to skip account creation completely and let something like Jamf Connect create the user account, part of the MDM spec says that when a device gets through the automated device enrollment, there has to be an admin user on the box for for legacy purposes. It doesn't really apply anymore, but if the first user account, if there's not a user account on the box that has admin rights, there's no way to turn on FileVault in legacy situations. So this is kind of one of those things that you're stuck with, but it's just, we'll talk a little bit more about it later and how to get rid of it.
So looking at different ways that you can accomplish some of the goals that a local admin may have traditionally been used for, why not use the personal recovery key from FileVault? I sure hope that everyone is encrypting their data at rest, as that's very important for security. But that FileVault recovery key has a lot of power, as it can be used to reset passwords of users. Now that most users of a computer are going to be a cryptographic user that has a secure token, you need that cryptographic element to reset. So easy, use that PRK, personal recovery key. You can boot to Recovery OS, access data that way. And then with Apple Silicon and macOS Monterey or later, you can authenticate at boot to a computer with Apple Silicon, which is really neat as well. So after we've talked about some of these different ways to avoid creating an account, maybe you'd still like to deploy a local account for some of those other reasons beyond the pre-stage. Well, you should be careful. Some of these workflows that you may have been using before macOS 11 have different behaviors, specifically with the order of operations of when an account might be created, and comparing that to when the actual person on the computer types in their password and logs in for the first time. Ideally, you don't want to have a situation where you have to go back and clean up from a deployment scenario that left a user in a bad state. So again, do you really need it? Sure, we'll take a look at that as it goes in. But it's important to know what you're getting into, because at the end of the day, you'll want to have a bootstrap token escrowed to Jamf Pro, and you'll want that end user to be a secure token and volume owner user, so they can use FileVault and all the good stuff with Apple Silicon. Again, another plug for Ben Tom's session on secure tokens and cryptographic users. It can take the entire time of a session, as it should. All right, let's get into some workflows here. And I'll take you through this first workflow: how to randomize a password of a managed admin user created in a Jamf pre-stage. And note that when I say managed admin, that's the official name from Apple's documentation when speaking of that admin user created during the setup assistant during automated enrollment. It's different than the, quote, Jamf management account, which we'll also be touching on a little bit in this workflow. And this workflow really solves that problem of having a shared known password for all your computers that you enrolled with via a pre-stage. So you may be deploying Jamf Connect and be required to create that administrator, but as a wise and security conscious admin, you don't want you or your staff to know that password or have it shared across the fleet of computers as a common password. So we'll walk through this scenario. When we look at requirements, we'll go through a few different steps. You will need that additional admin set to be created during your pre-stage enrollment. You'll also have a Jamf management account configured with the exact same credentials, both username and password. And then to trigger this workflow in the right order, you're going to need to have an extension attribute that determines whether a bootstrap token is escrowed, and you can leverage that within a smart group when you target the randomization policy. Looking at each piece, the create a local administrator account before the setup assistant, that is selected, and I've got my IT admin user and my not very secure password because I typed it out with my own hands. Next, we have the user-initiated enrollment settings with the exact same username and password defined there as well. And then from a Jamf Pro setup perspective as well, you've got that extension attribute, just a basic check to get that into Smart Search so you can do different groupings. And then the final part is simply the policy that tells the Jamf management account to be randomized and randomly generate a new password. And really the secret to this trick, since we're using both the same username and password, is that the Jamf Pro database thinks that it may have created that first account, even though it was the MDM command that created the account. So we're effectively looking to have the management account adopt that account that was created during the pre-stage. And from a timeline perspective, I'll walk through this a brief step-by-step. The computer will go through automated device enrollment. While it's at the setup assistant, the account configuration command sends, creates that user. And the important part is that you want that primary user that's setting up the computer to sign in first on that machine. However, the first account is created, as long as they're the first one there, they get the first secure token. A bootstrap token escrows automatically, just as macOS intended as well. And then the Jamf agent will install after that, and then it tries to set that management account that was already created. And that's no problem that it's already there, but that's going to complete setup and finish your enrollment workflow. And when it comes to executing that action to randomize, your computer is going to fall into the smart group with that bootstrap token escrow criteria that you set. That membership is going to trigger that password randomization policy. And then finally, that MDM created account becomes adopted by the management account. And then in further use, you can have that password be used as a randomized password. And even if there is a one-off scenario where you need to leverage that password, you can use a policy to rotate that to a known password, or even deploy a one-time use account as well. Just note that a network connection is required when it does that. This workflow, you can find it on my GitHub page in more nuanced detail. But with that, I'm going to hand it back to Sean for some additional workflows.
Thank you. So my workflow we're going to talk about is creating an admin account just in time on a macOS client and then deleting it after it's no longer needed. Now, one of the tricks with Jamf Connect, especially when you're using a zero-touch onboarding type of procedure, where a user opens up a brand new machine, they go through the zero-touch workflow just in time, they have a user account created. That very first user account, since macOS Big Sur, can actually be a standard account, still get a secure token with no problem, be able to encrypt and decrypt the drive, which means that you can actually make a machine in what I consider to be the most secure state. No admin account on it at all. So if something was to happen, there's just no admin account. Now, the nice thing is we can make the admin account just in time for things that we might actually need to have an admin account on the box for. Let's say we just don't want to elevate somebody's user account that's already on the box with something like the Make Me Admin script or SAP Enterprise Privileges application. Well, maybe I need to take a computer from somebody for a short period of time to, say, install special software, maybe accessibility control software, one-off admin tasks that you wouldn't normally be doing to your entire fleet of computers. Or it could be, if you're using an Apple Silicon device, if you sneakernet over and need to reset somebody's password, you can make an admin account to do that. Also works pretty well with some remote hands tools, although watch out for applications that require that the connection be disconnected when you go to the login screen. It'd have to be running a remote hands tool on a system level, not just on a individual user level. Now, to do this workflow, you do need three tools. One, of course, is going to be Jamf Connect. You may have heard me talking about that a couple other times, a couple other JNUCs. Jamf Pro is required for this because we're going to also need Jamf self-service to run some policies on demand. So our workflow here is that Jamf Connect can create a user account with two types of credentials. It could either be a standard account or an administrator account. And we read that information from the identity provider. It could be sent down as this user is a member of a specific group, or it could be a role that's assigned to the user. That comes down in the identity token and tells us, hey, let's make this user a admin user. Now, second piece is we use Jamf Pro and the power of smart computer groups to find a recently made account on the Mac. And this example we're about to do is going to show all accounts made within the last 60 minutes. You can modify that just in case your IT team is either exceptionally efficient or a little bit slower. No problem. It's something that you can set. And then we have a Jamf Pro policy that will erase that user account when we are done with it. So our admin is going to create a new user account by going to the Apple menu, signing out the existing user, and logging in. The admin will do whatever the needful is, that one-off task. That because that user's computer has a bootstrap token stored in the Jamf Pro server, that new admin account that's created on the box will be granted a secure token, which is great because you don't have to have somebody shoulder surfing you to take and help out with their computer. Maybe I grabbed the CTO's computer and she needs something installed on it. No problem. You can do the needful, install the computer software, reboot the machine. You temporarily have an admin account on that box with a secure token to be able to reboot the machine. No problem. After the needful is done, you run a policy in self-service to say it's time for me to clean up that account. I'm done with it. And then Jamf Pro, after you've logged out, will go in, reoccurring check-in, and just delete the account automatically for you. Here's a little video of that actually happening in process. So we're going to assume that we have the personal recovery key in this particular scenario. So we're just grabbing that right out of Jamf Pro. And of course, that access of the personal recovery key is logged so that way we can have that for reference later in case somebody's doing something weird. Our next step here is that now the Jamf Connect has come up on the screen, our IT user, in this example, will now log in with their credentials, which then pops up a identity token back to Jamf Connect that says, make this person an administrator user. That sequence is a little bit shortened there because it'll go through whatever steps that you had that you said not to skip in when you're making new user accounts. So our admin goes in and does the needful. Whatever we need to do, we are now a full admin on this machine, so therefore we have admin rights, can make changes to do whatever it is that we need to do. Once we're done, we just crack open Jamf self-service, and there will be a new policy that appears because we just detected that there's a brandy new account on this Mac. Okay, well, it's a brand new account. We probably want to nuke that. We might need to force an inventory first, so we'll just tell it to run an inventory with the Jamf self-service policy, and then we'll have a new policy will be scoped onto the machine based on that smart computer group. There's a lot of warning messages in this particular script that I've written here for you, and that is to save people from themselves. It's not that I don't trust you, it's that I don't trust anybody. So in this particular example, which feel free to modify if you desire, the user who is about to nuke their own account is warned several times, not just that the account's going to be nuked, but also gives them instructions on how to abort the sequence, just in case you don't want to have your user erased off the machine. Remember, this is a destructive process. When you do delete a user account, especially with this method, it will erase your home directory and everything else involved in it. Now that we've marked our account for self-destruct, we simply log out, and we'll let Jamf Pro do its thing. Jamf Pro will, at reoccurring check-in, see that now this this account is marked for deletion, and we'll then run a policy, again, based off a smart computer group. Power of smart computer groups is amazing, to actually erase that user silently in the background. We hand that computer back to our end user. Our standard user account logs in, And in this particular case, nothing's really happened on their side. It still looks like their computer because we didn't touch anything on their account. And they're just a standard user, and the admin account user is gone. Let's see, we're going into self-service in this video. I forced it to actually run that policy there. Oh yeah, and so we actually see the policies actually running here in self-service. We popped open the Jamf Pro admin console here on another computer just to show that, yep, that policy actually has run, and we can see the results of the policy inside of Jamf Pro, so we can actually verify that people have had the account deleted. And then we can crack open the wonderful world of users and groups in system preferences and see that user account has just gone off the machine automatically. Now, the script is a combination of a couple of different features of both Jamf Connect and macOS. So the first order of business is that when a user account is created on a Mac, it is creating a real, true, honest-to-goodness local user account. And we add some additional features to that user account, some attributes that we can read with the discal command. Now, in this particular case, we're looking for who is the OIDC provider. When a user account is created by the Jamf Connect login screen, it'll actually add in an attribute called OIDC provider. So we'll know that that is actually a user account that we just created. We'll look for those list of users first. Second, once we find that user, we can determine how recent they were made. And then we can use the Jamf Helper application to throw up all those warning messages. All of those things can be changed to your desire. And the script will put all of the users that were created in the last X minutes into just a little touch file where we can say, hey, these are the users that are going to be deleted. We'll update the inventory in Jamf Pro, which then triggers an extension attribute, which updates the smart computer group. The smart computer group is a target of policy that runs at reoccurring check-in that then says, yep, there's a dead pool file on here. We need to erase some users. So now it's time to actually do some stuff. And we'll run a script on that computer at reoccurring check-in that nukes and paves people right off that computer now. Now, for security purposes, you might want to look at this particular script for some fun times when there's only a standard user on the machine. Remember how I said before there's some legacy stuff still built into macOS where a user with a secure token might have to hand out secure tokens to other people? This was all decided before there was a concept of a bootstrap token working with the MDM. So macOS still has it set up that if you are the only admin account on a box and you have a secure token, you can't delete that user. So what the script does to get around this is it will temporarily look for a standard user on the machine and elevate that user to admin for a few seconds. It's just a necessity because macOS won't let you delete that account otherwise, that admin account otherwise. If you don't want that at all, you can turn this off in the script. You just say, don't look for that admin. And at that point, we will not elevate a user account for a few seconds in order to delete the other account. That account's stuck on there at that point, but at least you know what it's doing. Lastly, this script in its form that's up on GitHub is purposely broken. And why did I do that? It's because of this lovely little section here that says, you as the administrator have to go in and actually change this script on purpose. It's not that I don't trust you, I don't trust anyone. And you are deleting user accounts with this script. So you have to purposely just comment out one line and uncomment the other one. I figure if you did that, then you know what you're doing. You actually are TFM'd. Read the fantastic manual and the instructions with the script. Thank you for that. If you'd like to dig into the actual source code yourself, if you'd like to see any of these pieces in action, it too is available on GitHub. Here is a quick short link here for you and a QR code so you can jump to all the code available for you. We have one last workflow that we want to talk about, and that is that Jamf Pro made me make an account with the pre-stage. And let's say you have a scenario where you finally have decided, okay, I trust just-in-time account creation. which you should because it's wonderful. And you want to go to the most secure status, which is just no admin account on a box whatsoever. Well, it's real simple. All you have to do is you just have to erase that user account that you were forced to make because of anachronisms inside of macOS. So all we have to do is figure out first, do we really need that account at all for any reason? Like, am I running any operating systems in this environment earlier than Catalina or earlier? We don't want to erase that user account. We can't. We need to be able to hand out secure tokens. Or are you one of the few people that still use the Jamf remote application instead of some other hands-on application for accessing people outside of your network? You still will need that Jamf management account on that box if you are using that Jamf remote application. Very rare that people are using that. And then in this scenario, it is super simple. There's actually a policy for this. It's built in. It just goes into your local account payloads, and you just simply go in and say, I want to delete the local account. I want to delete the local account named whatever the management account was that you created in your settings. And you can say just permanently delete the home directory, let it run once per computer, preferably sometime after you've validated that there's another user account on the machine, just in case. And it just goes away. Now, if you do end up with any failures inside there, it almost always comes down to secure token status. Did you do something that accidentally activated that admin account and gave it a secure token? Is there anybody else on the machine that is an admin account that has a secure token? If not, we might have to do some trickery in order to make sure that that user can be deleted properly. Anytime that you do an authentication with that user account, it may have the opportunity to get the secure token accidentally. So you just got to watch out for that. You might have to change your workflow around a little bit with your scripting. If it does fail to delete, it might be something you have to do by hand. You'll have to elevate a user to admin temporarily, delete that management account by hand, and then, or with the policy, and then revert that user back to a standard account. Not the end of the world, but it's something you have to remember. That's all from me. Mark,
Thanks, John. Yeah, so through this session, we've looked at a few different ways to really approach the why that you may have a local admin account deployed to a machine, hopefully taking into account any sort of times where you don't need to deploy it. Ultimately, that's going to be the safest, the best way to simply not deploy it if you don't need to. But if you do, you've got some different options and ways to do that that maybe don't break any secure token workflows. And then hopefully the examples that we gave in our workflows for randomizing passwords and just-in-time access with Jamf Connect can be useful in your environment too. With that, thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you have a great rest of your JNUC.